We are here. It is populated. But nonetheless, I hope you guys are doing all right. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. Love that song. It's the crush. Even the first one sounds like Jackie. What is it? Jackie Robinson. Your love lifted me high. That's the clip of it. But I'm glad that you guys can join me this morning. We have a fantastic guest, and he is easily one of my favorites, and I'm going to bring him on. We are joined with the one, the only, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Dr. Leon, how you doing this morning? You doing all right?
Man, I'm doing great. And I want your audience to know I'm since we're in the midst of Wimbledon, I am wearing my Arthur Ashe T-shirt. He's the one that got me interested in tennis when I was 8 years old. I wanted to be like Arthur Ashe. So from Richmond, Virginia, by the way. So
statue sitting right where at the end of Chamberlain.
Yeah, Heroes Park, Heroes Square. What's it called? Something like that.
I don't know the name of it. I remember it was a big fight over whether to put it, because it's weird, right? People today might be, not entirely, especially if you're younger. But at the time, it was like, whoa, we're going to put a statue of a black man, of a tennis player, of a blah, blah, blah.
In a Confederate monument park. Right.
Yeah. Right. Well, the Confederate thing didn't become an issue until recently. The Arthur Ashe thing was years ago, where there was a fight over it. I mean, we have the Arthur Ashe Center, but statue was the issue. And yeah, they put the statue up. They got him holding a tennis racket. I think it's at the top of Monument. There used to be Hulk's Barbecue, and then further up, it was the statue. So notice I understand it through food.
I was checking out. They had a barbecue joint. Next time, is that barbecue joint still there?
No.
Oh, no. Okay. The next time in Richmond, I'll go get me some barbecue.
Yeah, there's another one, but it's not as good.
Okay.
It's like Tyson ain't the champ no more. It's like,
unless you're trying to fight him on an airplane.
Well, no, what I mean is like these things are faded. Like those were the good old days. Like
no,
it's not.
I understand.
Yeah, it's not as clear. I guess there are a few stories I want to hit with you. One has to do with Trump and his largesse, and it's less about Trump. The other one, I mean, it's more about how we as a public engages it. You wrote an article that was going into this idea of W.E.B. Du Bois talking about how the moment that you try to change anything about the system, they call you a communist, and how that relates to Zoran Mamdani and the wind that hit the people that he effectively appointed. Well, he didn't appoint, he backed, and how all of those people effectively won. And not just them, there were other races that people who would be considered, quote, socialists, or at the very least to the left, won, especially people going against AIPAC. So that's one story. The other story I want to hit is Kiev. Kiev is in flames right now. Russia apparently blew up. Well, it's in flames again. They hit a military site that was producing weapons, drones, these type of things, and the thing had this massive explosion. And I guess my thing is, I think some people are being triumphalists about Russia, and I do think they're right that Russia is going to win the war. And I want your take on this. The issue is not winning the war. The issue is winning the peace, and that's a different animal.
Well, the first thing I noticed, one of the things that I try to do with stories like this is I think it's important to read a couple of different sources. So I read it in the Washington Post. Then I read it in the New York Times. Then I went to Sputnik News and TASS. And for those that don't know, Sputnik and TASS are Russian news sources. And when you read it in the Washington Post, you walk away thinking that Russia just indiscriminately sent missiles into Kiev. But when you read Sputnik and TASS, they tell you the places that were targeted, and they were all military targets. And in the Russian sources, they also draw the contrast between Ukraine striking Russian civilian targets and Russia striking military targets. So I just wanted folks to know that you can get variations on the same theme if you read different sources. That's why we read multiple sources.
Right.
You know, on this one, I wonder, to your point about Russia being able to win the peace, I think that might be a little bit different on this one, because the United States isn't the power that it once was. It's not the empire that it once was. And also, I believe that the Europeans are now seeing this in a much clearer, through a much clearer prism than they would have, say, 10 to 15 years ago. And then there's another story that I think is tangentially related, and that is the German prosecutor has charged a Ukrainian military officer with involvement in the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline. So that story, and I could be way off on this, but that story is an indication to me, and again, 10 years ago, you probably wouldn't have heard the story, let alone that it was a Ukrainian military officer that was directed to carry out the strike against Nord Stream. Now, the fact that that is being made public tells me that there seems to be a break in the cohesive nature of the European dynamic. Now, I could be making more out of that than there is. So all of that to say, I think you're absolutely right. Winning the peace is going to be difficult. I don't think it's going to be as difficult now as it would have been, say, 10 years ago.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Because America doesn't have the juice that it had to carry this thing on. And final point, honestly, I think the United States will be glad when this is over, as Europe will. They may not want to admit it, but because first of all, it's no longer in the headlines. You got to search. There has to be a major. It used to be on television and in the media every day. Right. Now there has to be a major strike, or you have to search certain sources in order to get updates on it. I think people have grown very weary of this, and they will be glad when Russia brings this thing to a conclusion.
Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad that we can have. I like it when people disagree. We really disagree on this one.
Okay.
All right. So the reason that I think they are. So let's get into it. The reason why I think that they were so willing to say that a Ukrainian did it is because they were protecting the U.S. It's like it's like a person admitting to one crime to avoid the fact that they committed a larger crime. And in this case, it's like somebody throwing their body to protect the U.S., in which case Germany doesn't want to own up to the fact that the Biden administration effectively said we were going to blow it up. Right. And so they're like, yeah, Ukrainians in a SS Minnow did it. And
they did reference the skipper.
Like, yeah, I think it's... Yeah, the skipper. That's what I mean.
Yeah, they did reference a skipper in a small boat. I said, damn, Gilligan. What are you?
It's like Gilligan, gave them the heads up. It's like, all right, we can go down, guys. The two guys set explosives. This thing will require a major operation, and these guys are acting like four guys in a boat did it. That's the first point. The second point, I think the propaganda war is meant to keep the real war going, not that they wanted to stop, if that makes sense. Like, meaning
No, makes
all of the
sense.
propaganda, all of this stuff about Russia losing, all of this stuff is being put out there, not as a thing unto itself. Meaning the goal is not to humiliate Russia. The goal is to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia. The humiliation of Russia is the thing that allows them to keep giving money to those fools earn, if that makes sense. It's not about, meaning it's not about the headlines. The headlines are only there to give the European population and the American population this belief that Ukraine has a chance, that Ukraine can win. Because if you come to the assessment that they're losing the war, then it's very hard to give them another $100 billion. But let me.
Well, see, I think a lot of what you and I are saying, both things can be true at the same time. In reading that article, they were very clear to state that the Ukrainian officer was directed to engage in this action. They didn't say who gave the order. And we know. I mean, you were watching Schultz in the Rose Gardens with Biden, as I was watching Schultz. I think it was Schultz in the Rose Garden with Biden, when the reporter asked Joe Biden, "What about the Nord Stream pipeline?" And Joe Biden said, "It will not be turned up under any circumstance." And the reporter came back and said, "But Mr. President, that's not our pipeline." And Joe Biden's response was, "That doesn't matter. It's not going to be reopened." So, no, I think a lot of, you on this one, both you and I, both of us can be right at the same time. And when this thing ends, I don't. I'm not saying that it'll be easy for Russia to win the peace. What I'm saying is it's not going to be as difficult for them to do it with this conflict as it would have been if this were going on 15 years ago. And primarily because the United States isn't nearly as strong as it used to be. NATO isn't nearly as strong as it used to be. And I believe the Europeans are sick of this crap.
Well, again, let's step further into it.
Okay.
Let's say, that's Kiev.
Right.
Tonight or last night.
That doesn't look good.
That looks like the fourth stage.
That looks like Pompeii.
Yeah, right. right. And I don't mean to laugh, but yeah, you're right. That looks like Pompeii.
That looks quite ominous.
That doesn't look good, and that doesn't look like you're winning a war, despite all of the rhetoric that is coming out recently, claiming that the Ukrainians are winning, the Russians on the back foot, and all this other stuff. Nonsense.
If my condo is in one of those buildings, I got a problem.
I hope your insurance is paid up.
Right.
I just hope your insurance is paid up. Your house insurance is paid up. Let's be honest. People have been asking for Russia to be more aggressive in prosecuting this war, including other Russians. And I think the problem that Russia is ultimately going to have is a question that I asked when this first started, within the first year. How does it end? Let's say that Russia clears the Donbass, which is they're going to do, and Putin turns to Europe and says, "Okay, I've accomplished my military objectives." What are they going to tell Putin? They're going to tell him to F off. And they're going to keep dumping money and weapons into whatever rump state that's left. Meaning, even if you're using drones or even if you're using these terrorist attacks, the U.S. doesn't need to be fully engaged to have a rump state that continues to attack and lob missiles or lob drones at buses. This is the new thing that Europe is doing, right? Instead of missiles, they're using drones, and they're using drones to effectively have terror campaigns against Russia. You have a bunch of people who are nearly Nazis, or the closest thing to it, short of the Israelis, that are effectively in Kiev that is running the government. And nothing has been done up to this point that says that that government is going to be changed over. That's not entirely true. Lavrov makes allusions to the fact that they're not going to keep the same government. But still, I hope you get my point. Even a rump state has the capability of lobbing and firing missiles and drones into Russia. Europe doesn't seem to be changing policy on this. The US doesn't seem to be changing policy on this. And the last time they met, all of them were like, hey, these drones being fired into Russia hitting civilians is fantastic, including Trump signing on to it. That doesn't seem like it's changing.
I can't debate that with you, and you may be 1,000% correct. The only other point, data point that I'll throw into the conversation is that Russia has already, this is similar to Iran in that Russia has already been through this with Europe a couple of times with
Yes.
the what do you call them? I'm drawing a blank on the two ceasefires that they entered into.
The Minsk agreements.
Minsk agreements. Thank you. That Russia has already been through this twice with Minsk 1 and Minsk 2. And so now what instead of a peace agreement, what Russia has been very clear on is this is going to be unconditional surrender. Which is why I used to say, fire up the USS Missouri, dig up Emperor Hirohito, because like Japan, y'all gonna surrender on this one. So I think that's another to me another reality here. The very same way that Iran is saying now, you're not gonna lie to us anymore. We can't trust you anymore. We're not going down this road with you anymore. So again, that's again, you could be, and you may very well be 1,000% correct.
I hope not. Me too. When I have these conversations with people, like either with you, Ted, or somebody else, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I am. I don't think I am. And up to this point on the Iran thing, my model has been on point. Hopefully I'm wrong on this. I hope I'm wrong on this. I mean, even my mom looks at this and is like, why doesn't Putin end the war? Like she's like one of those Russian older women who's sitting in Moscow.
Oh, like, maybe your mother should call him. Maybe your mother should call him.
Babushkas. Like, why don't they end the war? I mean, people are sick of this war. And I guess my thing is like, even if you militarily, I don't think Russia wants to take all of Ukraine. That would just be one of the worst case scenarios. By the same token, the terrorism thing is real. Like the plans for Europe are real.
I'm sorry, start that sentence again. The what is real?
Well, the plans for Europe are real.
Oh, the plans for Europe.
Their point of view, they don't care about Ukrainian lives. They don't care that Ukraine is being bombed right now, only insofar as they could say, oh my God, look at the Russians and their barbarity. Right. No, from their point of view, if they can put terrorists or mercenaries in Ukraine in order to go after Russians, that's a win. If they can do this in a way that Russia can't hit them back or won't hit them back, they'll do it. That's a win. They don't care about the number of Ukrainians they sacrifice. Those aren't Europeans, or at the very least, people from their cities. They don't care. They're in a position where they can, in their mind, hit without being hit, which means that from their point of view, we put money into it, Russians die. The amount of money that we put into it is less relevant than the fact that Russians are dying. That's the way I think they look at it.
And I think you're right.
Okay, let's move to Trump. Trump puts out that he has earned $1.6 billion in the presidency, in the crypto schemes. This doesn't touch the fact that he just got an airplane that is supposed to be a new Air Force One from, I believe, Qatar, basically a bribe. This doesn't touch the fact that Witkoff and his kid are going around making business deals while the government is involved in those deals. So let's say the government says, hey, I'm going to purchase this plot of land for whatever particular reason. And hell, you may have the situations where the government even contacts another government. I think Azerbaijan was the case. In order to get a deal that just so happened, Witkoff and Kushner shows up in order to make the deal on the business side. Meaning you have a business wing and a government wing. The government will make a deal. Witkoff and Kushner will find somehow to get involved in order to make a profit off of that deal.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been taking place over and over and over again. And we know it as a public.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the wild part about it is not the fact that the presidency is being monetized. That should be wild to me, and that should be wild to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that the media reports it, the public absorbs it, and go about their day. It's that part that's mind-blowing to me and should be mind-blowing to all of us. Give me your take on that. And you can go into your article if you want to, in order to kind of piggyback these things, if it makes sense to do so. But I'm amazed at this, I don't know what to call it, the euthanization of America, this disenchantment to such a degree that when legit crimes are being reported, we just accept the fact that it's a crime and still move on, feeling incapable of doing anything about it. Give me your take on this.
Well, I thank you for referencing my article. It's entitled, "It's the Message, Not the Messenger." And the focus of the piece has to do with the whole furor or dust up around Democratic Socialists, New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani. But one of the elements of the piece that I think is relevant to this conversation is I opened the piece with quoting Dr. Du Bois from 1956, "Why I Won't Vote." And he says, "I believe that democracy has so far disappeared in the United States that no two evils exist. There is but one evil party with two names, and it will be elected despite all I can say or do. There is no third party." And so part of the problem that I think you're articulating is the fact that, for all intents and purposes, the Democrats are sitting idly by while this grift has been ongoing, while the bank is being robbed. And there's no substantive commentary from our elected representatives. Congress is supposed to be the check and balance, one of the checks and balances on the executive branch, and they have abdicated their responsibility. Now, some will say, well, the Democrats don't control the House and the Democrats don't control the Senate, therefore they can't get anything passed, which to a great degree is true. But one of the things that comes out of the Colorado election, one of the elections in Colorado, I believe, is folks want the Democrats to at least stand up and fight. They stand up and fight. You don't necessarily have to win, but show me some pushback. Show me some backbone.
Yeah.
Stop telling me that Donald Trump is a thief. We know that. Stop telling me that Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing. We know that. What are you at? And start being the opposition. Don't just be the other party. You have stopped being the opposition. And that's one of the things that I really think has frustrated and angered so many people in this country. There is no opposition. So I found it interesting that Donald Trump said, because they flew the plane yesterday, the inaugural flight of the plane was of the new Air Force One was yesterday, and Donald Trump is standing on the tarmac extolling the virtues of this plane, and he says, "We couldn't have built this." Well, it's a Boeing aircraft, so last I checked, we did build it, and not only did the United States build it, they renovated or retrofitted after Qatar gave it to the United States. So Donald Trump said that. I think I know what he meant, But once again, he was being incredibly, in my opinion, inartful when he said we couldn't have built this. Well, again,
Yeah.
it's a Boeing plane. Seattle, Washington is where Boeing is based. And I think Seattle is in the United States. So anyway,
I think so.
last I checked. So that's, you know, the grift is on, the grift is real. And you've had, final point, you've had some Democrats say, oh, when, you know, after the midterms, when we take control of the House and the Senate, we're going to investigate. Yeah, you all investigate all day, every day, and nobody ever goes to prison. So, pish posh.
Degradation of the political system. That's what I think it is. And I think you can see it because I remember I used to have conversations with what is his name? Daniel. He's the one who wrote the book on basically the Constitution needs to be overwritten. That there needs to be that the system doesn't quite work. That the Constitution is too old. We're 250 years old. That's too old, and those type of things. And the thing I used to ask him, well, what changed? Like, meaning, what was it that changed to the point? Because the document allows growth, it allows change, it allows updates, etc.
That's one of the brilliant elements of the document.
Right, but his point of view is
it's elastic.
It's elastic, right? So then the catch becomes, okay, so why is our political system the way it is, if that's true? And I think what it boils down to is not the document, it's the people. A document is there to allow a government to do what it needs to do to grow and change according to environmental circumstance. People are different. And I think the moment that you lose this kind of revolutionary drive, this belief in America being more important, those type of things, then you just have corruption. And you get people getting better and better at being corrupt, which is, I think, where we are now. I'm making a point to say the reason the Democrats don't is because they don't care. Like, it's not like Mamdani seems to be hungry, right? He seems to be in this mindset of, I need more people like me in office, and I'm going to do that. I'm young, I'm spry, and I believe in things, and I'm going to try to get those things done to whatever degree I could get done. I don't think that's what Democrats are. I just don't think that's what they are. I don't think they ultimately care. I mean, obviously the president is being corrupt. And the catch becomes, do you think they're going to do anything about the emoluments clause, even if they get in Congress coming up, even if they have majorities enough to take President Trump out? Do you think they're really going to do it?
No, because they then will be afraid. Well, a couple of things. One, to the point about the Constitution being old and needing to be rewritten. I disagree with that 1,000%. I always draw the distinction between the Earl Warren Court, where Chief Justice Warren was the Chief Justice during the Eisenhower administration. And I have always said that that was the most progressive Supreme Court in the history of the country. And that ever since the Warren Court, every subsequent Chief Justice has worked to overturn a lot of the progress that was made during the Warren Court. The Warren Court focused more on what I think the fundamental elements of the Bill of Rights were: protecting the people against overreach by the government.
Right.
And whether it's the Burger Court, whether it's the Roberts Court, and I'm leaving one out, they have all been working to turn the tide back to where the government has more control over the people. So it's not that the document is bad. It's the manner in which the courts have, and I mean, look at some of the foolishness that we just got from the Roberts Court as it relates to the 14th Amendment and some of the other issues that they spoke to.
Yes.
It's BS. And so then you throw on top of that the Citizens United decision that has allowed that now considers businesses politically to be people. Well, that right there violates the whole element of why you form a corporation in the first place. Corporations are not supposed to be people. That's why you incorporate, is to protect your personal wealth from being sued when your company messes up and folks want to come in and take all your money. So it's not that the document is bad. It's that Americans have abdicated their responsibility as citizens, and we are no longer providing the checks and balances on our representatives, as our representatives are supposed to be the check and balance on the executive branch. So, and then you make the point. Okay. And then you make the point that Democrats don't care. Democrats, for the most part, have been paid not to care. And that takes us through Citizens United. And one of the points that I make in my most recent piece, and thank you, Andre, for helping me edit that thing, is AIPAC. Look at one of the big conflicts or contradictions that you see with these with the races in New York, the mayoral primary in DC, and now what's happened in Chicago, in Colorado, is this has become the people versus AIPAC. Because what you're finding is, on the Democrat side, a lot of the Democrats that are now crying foul, go, with the exception of Letitia James, go back and look at how much money AIPAC has put into their political coffers, and look at how much money AIPAC put into the coffers of many of the people that lost in New York. And what you'll find is this is really the people versus AIPAC. So I don't think it's that the Democrats just for some reason ate the wrong brand of cereal and now they don't care anymore. No, they've been paid not to. Hence, Du Bois's point, there's now one party, two wings on the same bird.
Yeah. No, I accept that. I even agree with that. I mean, paid not to care is, you mean they've accepted money and decided not to care.
Okay.
Meaning, I get your point. Like they're getting money and they're responding to the fact that the money, to the pressure of the money. I get that. Right. True. Right. I think that, I mean, and then to make it even worse, 90% of the elections are won by the side with the most money, which at that point, I don't even know how you define the democracy under that model, or republic under that model.
And see, the Democrats could very easily speak to this by making overturning Citizens United one of the elements of their platform. They could be out right now speaking to, there's too much money in the political process, and one of the things that we're going to work towards, if elected, if we gain control, we are going to work to overturn Citizens United. They won't say that. They won't say that. And one more, I'll give you one more example. The Social Security tax and all of this conversation about Social Security is going bankrupt. You can fix that problem very simply. Raise the ceiling on the Social Security tax up to $1 million in income, in salary. You can fix that problem like that. Right now, I think it's $184,000. If you raise it, if you after the 184 and $1, you don't pay Social Security tax on that dollar. Raise it to $1 million. If you get $1 million in salary, not income, in salary, then you pay Social Security tax up to $1 million. And if you're getting $1 million in salary, that's a hell of a lot of money. That's a hell of a lot of money.
I think W.E.B. Du Bois is right. And I say that to say that the issue is not whether there are solutions. There are solutions. Correct. The issue is whether you ever touch those solutions.
Correct.
And as you point out, I don't think two corporate parties that are funded by effectively the same people in a capitalist system where maximizing profit, whether you're in politics or out, is the modus operandi. I don't think these guys are going to be able to even touch that.
And
And I
not
think
only
that's
not only is it a corporate system, it's a system that is corporately controlled by the military industrial complex, which is why
yeah.
both sides of the aisle don't have a problem backing American interventionism. I think I said that correctly.
Intervention. I know what you mean.
Interven-
I know what you
inter-
mean.
America intervening in the politics. Nicolas Maduro should not have been kidnapped in Venezuela,
True.
and Democrats should be screaming about this. Look at the decision on Haitian refugees. Look at what the United States is doing in Cuba. Democrats should be screaming about the genocide in Gaza. There's a reason that they're not, and it's because they've been paid not to.
You are putting a lot of this on Democrats. I'm putting this on both. And the
Oh,
reason why I'm
well,
putting it on both,
absolutely, no, absolutely. But
well,
the reason I'm right now putting it on Democrats is because the Republicans are in power, and the Democrats are supposed to be the opposition, and they're not. So, and also, if you look at the politics, and you know this as well as I do, if you look at the politics over the last 60 years, and I'll just pick 60, you can say 70 years, the Democrats have been the party that have presented themselves as supporting civil rights, supporting human rights, that's how they have presented themselves. So the reason that I'm putting this on Democrats in the context of this conversation is because they're the ones that aren't being true to the narrative that they have been trying to sell us.
that's fair. No, that's fair. Very
Okay.
fair. The only reason why I pointed both is because
it is
going
both.
back to the very first point of how do we watch an obvious crime in place and just go about our business? And what does it mean for a country that is supposed to be governed by laws? I mean, the entire premise, right? We're not governed by a king, we're governed by laws. And we're governed by laws because we want a fair, equitable system that regardless of who you are, especially who you are, meaning if you're in a position of authority, you have that much more of a reason to remain on the straight and narrow, and we will prosecute you if you do so. Okay, that's gone.
Here's an example. This stood out. This really came to my mind yesterday when they were showing Donald Trump at the opening of the Roosevelt Library.
Right.
And one of the things that was said, and it came through just in passing, is that all other living presidents were invited to the event and they didn't show.
Nobody showed. Wow.
They don't want to be seen with Donald Trump. When Obama opened his library last week, every living president except Trump was there. This guy smells so bad. My mentor, Tom Porter, calls him stinky. He smells so bad, nobody wants to be around him. He's like stepping in a pile of crap and you can't get it off your shoe. But my point in raising this is you don't hear any of the commentators saying, wait a minute, folks, let's unpack this knapsack. As Gary Flowers would say, let's unpack this knapsack. Why is it that at Jesse Jackson's funeral, every living president was there except Trump? Why is it that nobody wants to be seen with this criminal? They don't talk about that. They don't elaborate on that. They don't explain that. I think that's very telling, and I think that's very important because it would be guilt by association, and they don't want to be seen with the grifter in chief.
I mean, Obama kept his nose clean for obvious reasons on any kind of major corruption. But the Biden administration I've never seen corruption at the level that Donald Trump is running with.
Right.
But Lord knows the Hunter Biden stuff stunk.
Right.
The Hunter
Absolutely.
Biden stuff stunk. I guess I'm saying it's almost as if it's not that Trump is doing anything dramatically different. He's just doing it bigly.
Yeah.
And it's the bigly part where people see it and just don't respond to it. One thing I want to hit, though, the Constitution. So the Senate is a minority body. And the way that it's arranged doesn't necessarily allow, so you can have a situation where the overwhelming majority of the country wants something. A small minority doesn't for whatever particular reason, and it goes nowhere. The filibuster is, again, another minority issue where the minority dominates, basically topping from the bottom. The minority is dominating the top. Same thing with the elections. You could have something like California blocked by something like Iowa, which is like infinitesimally the population. That needs to change. Nothing gets done under that model. And it's almost like it's built specifically for nothing to get done. And for the amount of work that the public needs to do to change anything is just enormous. I mean, I would see that as being an issue. Something
I'm not saying you're wrong. I would push back on that in that when you look at the process in the beginning, it was the smaller states such as New Jersey and Rhode Island that were pushing back against Virginia, wanting to be sure that the larger states didn't run roughshod over the smaller states. So they developed the House of Representatives, which is based upon population. And then the check and balance on that was the Senate, where each state had the same number of representatives. And so it was a matter of protecting the interest of the smaller states against tyranny by the larger states. So I don't know that the issue is structure as much as it is money. And once again, we don't have parties that are in opposition to each other. The money has corrupted the process to where they're being paid to support the same interests. The language they use may be different, but the policy that winds up being the end result, if there is policy, winds up benefiting the same.
Professor, I'm going to let you go because we're coming up to the 8 o'clock hour.
All right.
You have my appreciation. I always enjoyed these conversations. I always do. And by the way, you're on Sirius Radio.
Yes.
Where can people find your blogs? I pulled up because the article that you gave me was just the document itself. I didn't see where the article was coming from. I see your website or your blog. So
my work is syndicated by the Trice Edney Newswire. So if you subscribe to the Trice Edney Newswire, the piece will be there. Today, it'll start being picked up by African-American newspapers across the country, and I will post it later today on Facebook and some other places, so people will be able to find it.
Very nice.
So that's why it is the way it is.
Okay, and Sirius Radio.
Oh, Sirius XM channel 126. In fact, let me just say quickly, the show is Inside the Issues on Sirius XM 126 live Saturdays from 11 to 2 and Eastern on channel 126 Urban View. And this Saturday, with it being the 4th of July, I'm going to be joined by Tom Porter, economist Dr. Linwood Tawhid, and activist Gerald Pereira from Guyana. And the question that I'm posing to each of them is very simple. The United States is celebrating its 250th year. What does that mean? And I'm throwing that to them and letting them take it wherever they want to take it. And trust me, it's a hell of a this because it's the holiday. We're taping this week, but it'll be new content on Saturday, and they're answering the question: what does the 250th anniversary of this dying empire? What does that mean? And folks, you'll enjoy it.
Professor Wilmer Leon, thank you, my man. You be safe.
Hey, appreciate it, bro.
Have a good one. Bye-bye. All right. Fantastic conversation. He is easily one of my favorite guests. He is one of my favorites. There are a few. I don't want to name names because anytime you name names, you're going to get it wrong on some level. But he is definitely one of my favorite guests to talk to. I always enjoy the back and forth, and particularly when we disagree. That's when I like it the most. Just to show this one more time, just in case people missed it, who might have came a little bit later. This is Kiev. Oh, by the way, any questions? I'm sorry, let me do one thing at a time. I did Kiev, and then I want to talk about Iran. This looks terrifying. That is terrifying. And just to read the blurb on Sputnik, Russian army hits Kiev missile guidance plant in a major retaliatory strike. In a large-scale retaliation strike, Russian forces targeted a Kiev-based facility producing control systems for Flamingo and Firepoint missiles, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. Additional strikes include the industrial plant involved in the production of storage of components for the Lima electronic warfare system, gas distribution stations in Kiev and Kiev regions that supply energy to key Kiev defensive industrial plants, a missile assembly and components plant in Kiev, which manufactures and upgrades sighting systems for Ukrainian armored vehicles, as well as UAV parts, a fuel depot providing diesel supplies to Kiev garrisons, and a transport and logistics hubs where drones, warheads, ammunition, and vehicle components were being stored. Like I said, what a terrifying picture. What a terrifying picture. The reality of it is, Ukraine has been going with this idea of they've been fighting a propaganda war. And I don't mean this in the traditional sense of warfare. All warfare has some level of propaganda elements associated with it. You want to keep your side, the morale of your society up. You want to keep the morale of your military up. And morale does translate into some capability on the battlefield as opposed to a demoralized military that believes it's going to lose or that it's currently losing. The other part, and the reason why I bring this up, is because this is not about just the individual morale of Ukrainian soldiers. I would imagine that morale is damaged significantly. The issue is Europe and the United States. These are funders of the war. Ukraine is not an entity unto itself. Ukraine is a vassal state. It's a puppet government. It's a government that is fundamentally controlled either through the US, the UK, or at the very least heavily influenced by Europe. That's because of the amount of money that they're effectively getting in order to launch the military campaign. Meaning, in order for them to keep the war going, they need money from Europe and the United States to make that work. They need weapons from Europe and the United States to make that work. That's what they require. If those things were not in the mix, this war would not be going on because they would not be able to maintain the war on their own. The propaganda in this case is less for their own troops and more for the idiot Europeans to continue to give them money to continue to prosecute the war. The rub is, though, and for those populations, the rub is that they would prosecute the war anyway. The reason why I asked the question Russia is going to win the war, true. And I'm taking this from Dr. Brothkin, I believe his name is. He's a commenter online. He's actually quite good. He was making this argument, Russia will win the war. The issue is not whether they would win the war. They will win the war. The issue is whether they could win the peace. Winning the peace is different. When I've made the argument in the past that Putin is chasing safety, I'm talking about winning the peace. Sure, you have the military capability of decimating Ukraine. You have the military capability of basically doing to Ukraine what Israel is doing to Gaza. You choose not to do it. Fair point. I don't want you to do that. I don't know if people want Russia to do that. Winning the peace is different. When you stop, whenever you stop, how do you stop the Ukrainians, whatever's left of Ukraine, from firing off missiles, dumping terrorists into whatever's left? Meaning, whatever rump state that's left, how do you stop that rump state of Nazis from sending drones, missiles, terrorists into the country to do what they've been doing, either at the Crocus Music Hall, either the drone hitting the girls' school, drones hitting buses? How do you stop that? And does it require you to go further than what you would all left to your own devices choose to go in order to create a sanitization quarter? And will that quarter be enough? What you have is a situation where the Europeans believe and have gotten very comfortable with dumping money, weapons, bullets, drones, etc., with the intention of killing Russians. They've gotten very comfortable with that. That doesn't seem to necessarily change, providing a rump state of Ukraine is left. I hope you get my point. It's a thicket. It's a problem. Even though you have the military capability of winning the war, how do you effectively maintain the integrity of the Russian state against intrusion by drones, or for that matter, missiles funded by the Europeans, and you know they're funded by the Europeans? How do you do that? Now, some people will come to the assessment that Putin is weak and that Putin should hit Europe. I would make the argument that hitting Europe is not necessarily off the table, but hitting Europe comes with the assumption that when you do so, everything else has been lost. At least that's the way I think Putin is looking at it. That A, he needs to build up the military capable or sufficient in order to fight NATO. There's that. And B, until he's comfortable that all quarters, all doors are effectively closed in regards to any kind of negotiations itself. And more to the point, that until he's confident that the military is capable of fighting that war and winning that war, then he is going to be less inclined to have that war and isolate his capabilities as a force distribution to Ukraine itself. The other caveat to that is nobody wants to fight that war. If you're a Russian leader, you're not looking at this thinking to yourself, you can hit Europe and Europe can't respond to you, or that you're looking at this from the perspective of this is most likely a nuclear war. Most rational people don't want to open that door. By the same token, Europe may force him to do so. And that should be terrifying to all of us. Obviously, the attacks on Kiev are meant well, it doesn't have to be retaliation. It's a war. Wars are wars. So using the language, we're retaliating for so-and-so, you don't really need to use that language. I understand why they're using that language. They're using the language to imply that Ukraine did something that they're responding to, as opposed to this is a war, and the goal of a war is to win the war, whatever the war aims are in this case. One last thing that I want to hit before I let it go. By the way, if you guys like the content, you find yourself coming back here often, like, share, subscribe. You can support this content, PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats, memberships. All of those things are beneficial to the show. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. I will do my best to pay attention and see if I can find those. Obviously, Super Chats and those things will come first, just because those things are supporting the show and basically paying for the content. But if I see it as it's flying by, I will do my best to answer that question. The other thing I want to hit before what time is it? Yeah, we have time. The other thing I want to hit before we close. Iran is being tested. Iran is being tested. Obviously, they know that. Like, meaning, I don't think they went into this thinking to themselves, we are going to deal with the US and the US is going to deal with us honestly, et cetera, et cetera. But in any game of chess, you can see what the opponent is doing. Like, it's not like you have to play in spite of that, if that makes sense. The fact that you can see my hand and I can see your hand can't change the fact that we are in a game and a contest against each other where both sides are trying to accomplish certain objectives. The reality of it is the United States is making the argument that the Strait of Hormuz should be open. The reason they're making that argument is pretty straightforward, despite the fact that they're flagrantly violating the first item in the memorandum and has not necessarily dispersed the money that Iran is supposed to be getting. So effectively, you have a document that the Israelis and Israeli firsters and the Zionists were screaming their heads off about, calling it betrayal, when the reality of it is the document is not being honored. It's not being honored. It was never going to be honored. The entire point of the document was to get Donald Trump out of a strategic fix. That strategic fix being our economy is going to hit the skids if we don't do something about the Strait of Hormuz being closed. We need to sign whatever we need to sign to get it open, period. Once it's open, now we need to find a way to mitigate the advantage of the strait while the strait remains open. This is kind of the playbook, right? And we are going to make the argument, meaning the US, that you agreed for the strait to be open. Now, obviously, Iran is going to make the argument that, well, we agreed in the document that we control the strait and we have 30 days or whatever that number is in order to get the mines and everything else to get the strait back up to where it was pre-war levels. So basically, we have no incentive to rush this if I'm Iranians. The US is going to be screaming its head off that the strait should be open. Now, part of the reason that the United States is doing that, obviously, because they need to refill their oil coffers and those type of things, and they want time in order to build up military to sufficient strength. The flights and the cargo flights that have been flying to West Asia has been some of the largest that we've ever seen. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the largest that have ever taken place. They're not doing that for no reason, meaning the United States is not building up a huge military capacity near Iran for no reason. It's building it up because this war is not over. What we've encountered were the first two skirmishes, but the reality of it is what the US wants is to try to find a way to mitigate the advantage of the strait. If they can find a way for ships to be able to get through a different route, a different pathway, a pathway that the Iranians can't necessarily control or hit, or at the very least, it's not as dire as this current iteration of the conflict has been. They will do that because they would like to reopen strikes and attacks on Iran, but attack Iran in a way that Iran cannot respond. Response in this case being Strait of Hormuz. I don't know if we entirely care about Kuwait, Bahrain, or some of these other places getting hit. At the very least, I don't think we care to the degree that Iran cares about its own population. I don't think it matters completely to us. Sure, it's humiliating. And sure, the US would prefer its military bases not being blown up. But from the war that Iran is effectively fighting, where it's trying to keep down casualties, versus the war that Israel and the United States are going with, where they're trying to maximize the number of people that they kill and murder. I'm calling it murder because Iran didn't ask to be in this war. The United States just initiated the war. There's a difference in those things, and there's a difference in the level of severity of damage that takes place when you're murdering and killing a huge number of people, and Iran's responding by hitting military equipment. Those are different things. And so if the US can get in the situation where it can attack without necessarily being hit in sensitive ways, or for that matter, the economic damage not necessarily, or the economic damage is mitigated, they will do so. The people who thought that this was over, or that the US was taking this ball and going home, I don't know why they thought that. I just don't. That is not the way any device of power is let go. The Israelis were not going to back out of Lebanon. In fact, not just not back out of Lebanon, the US used its puppet government to come up with a sham deal that is effectively a betrayal of Lebanon that allows the Israelis to stay indefinitely, occupying somebody else's territory. That is amazing. That is amazing. The only basic point is this. I will go where I began in the beginning. Iran is going to be tested all the way through. It is not an easy test, but Lord knows it's a test. Are you going to fulfill the memorandum of understanding? Are you going to stick to your guns in regards to ensuring that your money is released? Are you willing to go back into a war and a conflict? Are you willing to fight the US if need be in order to continue and maintain the sovereignty of the country itself? Are you willing to fight in order to maintain the integrity of Lebanon? All of these things are questions that are being effectively leveled at Iran as it's in this pressure cooker. Again, it is fascinating. Up to this point, Iran has handled itself masterfully well. They've been very competent in regards to dealing with the US. But the triumphalists need to calm down. This war is not over. Iran won the first iteration and the first skirmish. There will be further skirmishes to come. And they would have to continue with a certain amount of aggressiveness and provocativeness in dealing with it. Provocative, in this case, is not a vice. It is a virtue. And any notion of passivity will be seen as weakness and will be taken advantage of. Not to mention, in this particular situation, what you communicate is almost as important as what you do. And I hope that makes sense. Meaning your responses to things is going to be read vigorously. And if they believe that that response indicates weakness in a particular area, that weakness will be exploited. I'm saying provocativeness is no vice. It is a virtue in this situation. We have a chat. Let's go to the chat. And this is, I can't see this at all. Jabari Media, Russian bot isn't an insult anymore. It's honorable. You would think, Jabari, that sometimes it feels like this goes down a memory hole. That we go through phases in our society. And in the context of those phases, all these things are said. It puts me in my mind, my drunk grandfather. My grandfather used to say all sorts of random stuff. He would curse people out. He would curse my grandmother out. He would say that my grandmother was trying to fuck the insurance man. He would stumbling downstairs drunk, screaming at the women at the church meeting that my grandmother is with. That's who he was. I didn't get along with him. In fact, even as a child, I didn't get along with him. I think I told him, don't say shit to me ever again for the rest of your life. You can go fuck yourself. As we got older, we mended that. But it's like many things that you have to mend it and deal with it at a distance. You don't deal with it as individuals. You can mend it because you're dealing with it at a distance. He would say stuff, though, and have this belief that everybody would just forget the things that he said. That's what society on some level reminds me of. Calling people Russian bots. Russia is losing the war. Russia's fighting with shovels. Donald Trump is working with the Russians. There was that. Trump and Russia, etc. And it's almost as if that stuff falls down a memory hole. And then we encounter something very similar and act as if these things are somehow radically different from one another, when really it's chum that's put out to push society in a particular direction, often narratives that are driven by either media or political parties. You would think that the public will be inoculated against it. Oftentimes, it's not. Oftentimes, it is not. Let's see, is there anybody else? Any other questions? I don't see any more questions. No, we're in, and I'll close it on this, a very heady space. We are in a very heady space. And how this unfolds. Look, for people, when I say it is by the grace of Putin that we still breathe air, I mean it. And that's not a Russian bot thing. That's not a rah-rah Putin thing. That is a reality thing. Any of the things that Europe has been doing, meaning flying drones from European soil, using European soils as platforms, hell, even giving drone parts. If you look back to the war of 1812, the Brits were starting wars because of blockades and because of America trading with France. And Britain was at war with France. Meaning it was the very act of even trading with somebody that was a casus belli. I'm saying the idea that you're giving drone parts in order to murder Russians, if that's not a casus belli, nothing is. One last story. And I wanted to get to the story and didn't have the opportunity to get to it. We can do it now since we have a little bit of time. This is an interview that Putin gave. And there's a point in this interview where Putin effectively, rhetorically, asked the question, are these attacks, or these terrorist attacks, part of it? One second. Okay. No, that's not it. Okay, right here. Obviously, at the moment, Zelensky in Ukraine basically put out a proposal for a ceasefire on long-range strikes. A, Ukraine has never honored these proposals, so I don't even know what's the point of even sending out one. B, they ultimately understand that the Russian attacks are far more devastating as opposed to the Ukrainian pinprick strikes. Sure, Ukraine can hit stuff, and yes, the stuff that they hit hurts, but in comparison, these two things are not like the other. Zelensky is asking for this because he's trying to put limits on A, the Russian capability, but B, more so to the point, it's acknowledging his own limits. The number of manpower, or the amount of manpower that he's effectively lost in this war, is prodigious. And so if you only needed to fight over, let's say, 4 regions as opposed to 8, and I'm using this as an example, not as a model of anything, then it becomes far easier to distribute your forces to defend those 4 as opposed to those 8, especially if you have a huge amount of manpower that no longer exists. Putin, thankfully, I would say obviously, but I don't know if it's obvious, says no and rejects it. And basically says they're continuing the war up until the point of victory, whatever victory means. Putin brings up, if I can find the clip, is this it? Overall, I want to say, no, that's not it. Right here. Right here, right here. This is not it. Okay, I thought I saved the video. Maybe I didn't save the video. The clip is frustrating to me because he's asking. Okay, the clip is frustrating to me because they're asking rhetorically when the Brits and the Europeans came together and basically said, hey, we like the drones that are flying into Russia. And obviously, Marco Rubio, talking before Congress, made the point of saying, well, we are obviously on the side of the Ukrainians in this war. Hell, we're paying for the war or helping paying for the war. So clearly we're on the side of the Ukrainians, regardless of what the president says. I would say that's a no shit Sherlock, but apparently some people didn't necessarily know that. When Putin is making this point of saying, okay, well, these guys seem to be okay with the drones flying into Russia. Okay, what about the girls' school that was hit? What about the bus of those people that were hit? Why are you okay with this terrorist activities? And I guess my thing is, maybe he's saying that rhetorically, but he has to know. They're obviously okay with it. This is a war. Europe is directly involved in this war. And the people who make the argument that Putin should hit Europe or should hit a factory in Europe, not against those people saying that. I understand why they're saying it. They need to understand that for all intents and purposes, goes and spirals into infinity in regards to the conflict ahead and what that means. But I understand why they would say it, considering Russia has every right to hit European cities as a result of those European cities putting money and weapons to hit Russian cities. Can't cry foul when you're a party to the war. It's frustrating, though, to hear Putin basically say, hey, are you okay with this? Like, are you okay with these people being killed? And the answer is obviously yes. The answer is obviously yes. All right. I am going to end this. I'm going to be on the programmed. Oh, we have a membership. Membership. Who is this? I'm sorry, my vision is not the greatest this morning. It unfortunately fluctuates. Give me 1 second. And this is Golden Nation membership for 15 months. Golden Nation, I don't even know if I'm going to be alive in 15 months. That is pretty presumptive, but I appreciate the presumptiveness on this one. Good day, Jamal. Australia having appointed General Susan Cowell as Chief of Army. Sue has never seen a combat in a country that has been at war since 2001. Effectively, you're saying they put somebody who's completely inexperienced into the role, who has not really engaged in combat, and yet there she is, nonetheless. Golden Nation, yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I mean, Pete Hegseth has been put in as the Department of War chief. Let that sink in. Pete Hegseth is a TV personality that has a makeup room in his office that believes that being able to do push-ups is the same thing as either military competence, military efficiency, etc. He's an alcoholic TV personality that Donald Trump put in as head of the Department of War. Let that sink in. So I understand where you're coming from talking about Sue, who has never fought in a war in a country that has been at war, in perpetual war. Yeah, agreed. Agreed. All right. I'm going to end this. I'm going to thank all of you for joining me. You guys are fantastic. We had a really good show today. Shout out to Professor Wilmer Leon. He is great. I got to be honest with you. I was very discombobulated this morning. The reason is because I didn't expect to have a show this morning. As you all know, the Ayatollahs, the murdered supreme leaders, or the martyr, depending upon your take, his memorial service is coming up on the 4th of July. Irony of ironies, right? I was supposed to be there for that, meaning I was going to be flown out and I was going to be in Tehran to cover the memorial service. Now, this is not abnormal. I've covered events all over the world, especially for the radio network. Biden-Putin summit, European elections, the Lula elections, etc. And so this is not abnormal. This is kind of just old hand for me to do that. They were flying me out for several days. I was going to cover the ceremony. I was going to cover the memorial service in multiple locations that the service was being held. This fell apart. This fell apart. The flight was supposed to be today. Everything was being done at the last minute, and it fell apart. I think they're rearranging a trip for later on, but it will not be this weekend. I say that to say that Richard Wolff was supposed to be on the show. A few people were supposed to be on the show. Those people were effectively canceled because of the trip. So my discombobulation is not just because I'm discombobulated, it's because all of this stuff is being planned on the fly. And I thought that I would have been away for the next several days leading into next week. That would not be the case. I will be here bright and early tomorrow morning. Stas Kaprovnik will be here at 7 a.m. I need to get at 8 o'clock. I need to see if Garland's still coming on later on Friday. If so, we're going to have a full complement of shows on Friday. I still need to cut the shows from yesterday because I did a lot of shows yesterday. But all things being equal, that's where we are. If indeed anything changes, like if indeed another opportunity comes up, I will let you guys know in advance. I don't want you to looking around like, where's Jamal? But I think that's everything. I think that's all the show notes. I will say, if you guys dig the content, support it. Definitely help this content's operation or the show's operation. If you have any questions, feel free to ask those questions. If you have any comments, feel free to make those comments. I will try to check it. I don't have a producer, so it's not like I can have somebody in the background looking at it. But if I see it, I will, I guess, answer the question or ask my guests the question. Obviously, chats will get priority just because A, they're easy to see, B, they support the content. Well, it's just those two. Easy to see and they support the content. I'm going to say like. Oh, we have another. Let's go to this next one. See, like I said, it's easy to see. And this one is Cherie 38. Love you always, Jamal. Oh, thank you, Cherie. Thank you, Cherie. It's like I got to go through all this work to see the comment. It's like, love you always. Cherie, thank you for that. Thank you for that. All right, guys, I'm going to end this. I'm going to jump on the program that's going to start at 9 o'clock. It's going to be from 9 to 10 with Ted Rawl, Ram Bobby. And I think that's everything. You all be safe. Be kind to the degree that you can be kind. And I'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Thanks all. Thanks for having Wilmer. Wilmer is fantastic. I will be okay if on days that I am away, I would love it if Wilmer hosts the show. That's how much I like Wilmer. I would even be down to have a weekly co-hosting thing with Wilmer. That's how much I like Wilmer. He is fantastic. His intelligence, I always feel privileged to be able to speak to him and to have him on the show. And even in any conversation we've had off air, he's always been very kind and very nice. He is easily one of my favorite people to join. So I'm privileged to have him. He has my thanks for joining me. And like I said, he's welcome anytime. You all have a good one.